Boys! What's going on? It's, of course, your Papa Yam, here for another episode of Yammy Noop. My shift was actually cut short at Spencer's Gifts, which means I had just enough time to crawl back into my lair to deliver another informative, insightful, and dare I say it, provocative video. We're delving into the world of misunderstood motorcycles today. The bikes that came out, they got roasted by riders and the press alike, and ended up being unfairly judged because they didn't fit into neat little boxes we like to put motorcycles in. And don't worry, there's no Janices in today's video. Instead of being appreciated without bias, these bikes were as misunderstood as an angsty teen with a stick of eyeliner and a Good Charlotte CD in his Discman. So, without further ado, let's talk about the top 7 misunderstood motorcycles. Let's get into it, baby. Come on! When Ducati released the 999 in 2003, the motorcycle press and the Ducatisti faithful basically stormed Bologna with torches and pitchforks. Why? Because it didn't look like the legendary 916. That's literally it. That was the worst crime that they could think of. Pierre Terblanche designed something angular and minimalistic, and after Massimo Tamburini's rolling sculpture of the 916, 996, 998, people basically said, Ducati, we're done. It's over. Finito. And they tore up all of their Ducati merch and turned it into shop rags. But the terrible irony was that the Ducati 999 was actually an amazing motorcycle. It was more comfortable, it was more spacious, it had better wind protection, improved handling thanks to chassis refinements, and not to mention, it was absolutely dominant in racing. The 999 won 3 World Superbike Championships with Troy Bayliss and James Toseland at the helm, but people did not care. They saw the headlight and thought it looked like they were staring down the barrel of an electric pencil sharpener. The 999 used Ducati's 998cc Testastretta L-twin, pumping out about 124 horsepower in base trim and even more in higher spec race trims. It had fully adjustable suspension, Brembo brakes, and that wonderful Ducati sound. Honestly, to me, the more I think about it, the more the 999 might be the peak of old analog, old school Ducatis. On the street, it was way more livable than the 916 ever was. So come on, why the hate? Because motorcyclists are dumb and emotional. There, I said it. I'm glad I got that off my chest. It feels like a massive weight has been lifted. I mean, you don't believe me that motorcycle riders are dumb and emotional? Look at our GSX-R 1000 video we put out a couple weeks ago. Got ratioed. Riders of the day didn't want evolution. They wanted a shrine to the past. I mean, when do they not want a shrine to the past? The 999 was judged by the shadow of its older sibling instead of its own merits. Sounds a little familiar. Maybe like a certain 2025 Panigale V2, perhaps. Today, collectors are finally realizing, wait a second, this bike rips. Prices are actually creeping up the way 916 era bikes have, and if you ride one now, you'll immediately get why. The 999 was deeply misunderstood. Let's bring it back to the modern day. The Triumph Daytona name carries weight, not just in my own heart and soul, but in the collective heart and soul of street squids and track rats around the world. It's a bike synonymous with race replicas, super sport prestige, and Triumph's screaming, characterful 3-cylinder sport bikes. So, when Triumph announced the new Daytona 660, a lot of riders foolishly expected the second coming of the Daytona 675. Instead, what they got was a Trident with fairings and a slightly more hopped-up engine. It is a recipe for disappointment. The Triumph Owners Anonymous forum pages lit up with postings like, "This isn't a real Daytona. Triumph sold out. It's just a budget bike with a sticker pack and a faux aluminum frame." I myself also had a bit of a conniption while riding it.
This is a bit of a bastardization of a Daytona, and I'm sad. I am sad about it.
It felt like somebody had slapped me in the face with a basket of fish and chips and dumped a cup of scalding hot English breakfast tea in my lap. And while, yes, the Daytona 660 isn't a homologated race machine, that's not the point. We gotta look past that stuff. The 660 is built off the Trident platform, meaning a 660cc 3-cylinder engine with about 94 horsepower and 47 foot-pounds of torque, and street-biased everything. The frame isn't razor sharp. It's designed for approachable handling and everyday use. Ugh, boring. Okay, let me just take a little deep breath here and just refocus, okay? Let me get a little objective. If I look at it, certainly the Daytona 660 isn't the worst thing in the world because, let's face it, 99% of riders aren't even going to the track anyways. They're riding on the street, they're commuting, having some fun with their buddies in the canyons and the weekends. The Daytona 660 is light, comfortable, affordable, and versatile. It's still got Triumph's trademark triple character. It's not a boring parallel twin that makes it stand out from the army of bikes like that out there. It's not a 675 successor, and that's fine. The misunderstanding comes from certain people, I'm not gonna say me because it's definitely not me, expecting anything bearing the Daytona name to be a full-blown race bike. What Triumph delivered instead was something practical, fun, and unique in its class. With the right perspective, you'll see that the Daytona 660 is not so much of a letdown, but a decent addition to the middleweight not-so-super sport category, except it still sucks, and I hate it, and I don't want to see it, and it's not a real Daytona! Okay, mixed signals a little bit, right? Sorry, the whiteboard's giving me some serious marker fumes, and I'm getting a little lightheaded, and you know what? We gotta bring out my Daytona just to help me feel a little bit better. I feel much better. Let's change gears a little bit. The Yamaha VMAX is one of the more misunderstood bikes of all time because people looked at it and thought, cool, a sporty cruiser. I bet it handles like a sport bike with cruiser ergonomics. They couldn't have been more wrong. That's not what the VMAX ever was or ever claimed to be. It was just Yamaha's FU to the American motorcycle scene. And that was just them saying, we know you better than you know yourself. The original VMAX that launched in 1985 was a straight-line missile. Yamaha stuffed an 1197cc V4 into what was essentially a drag bike chassis. It was meant to make every dumpy Harley-Davidson V-twin look like it belonged in a Fisher-Price Barbie Jeep. Plus, they gave it the legendary V-Boost system, which dumped more air into the carbs at higher RPMs. The result was a bike that went like a bat out of hell in a straight line. And if you were to try to take it around a corner, well, let's just say I hope you didn't miss any payments on your life insurance policy. The handling was sketchy, the frame flexed like a Janus. Well, okay, maybe it's not that bad, but still, even the brakes just gently requested the bike to slow down. It was more of a suggestion of reducing speed. Critics tore it apart for not being a complete motorcycle, but Yamaha never intended the VMAX to be a sport bike. It was supposed to be a muscle cruiser in the truest sense of the word, a showstopper for stoplight drag races. I mean, that's the most American thing I can think of. It was about presence, intimidation, and raw acceleration. With 120 horsepower to the rear wheel in an 80s cruiser chassis, it was a bike that sent a message more than anything else. On street, if you ride it with the right attitude, the VMAX is a riot. Crack the throttle open, hang on, and pray you don't end up like the Ghost Rider. Later generations refined it a bit, but the spirit always remained the same. And I'm a huge fan of the newest generation of VMAX, and I'm kind of hoping that Yamaha maybe brings it back to compete against the Rocket 3. Drop me a comment if you think that would be amazing. Should really wash my hair before I end my shift at Spencer's. Oh, there we go. Good. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you're bound to know that we're partial to rock form handlebar mounts and phone cases around here. I'll always keep a mount on the giveaway bike as well as my personal bike, which always comes in handy if I'm doing a longer ride where I need GPS navigation. Just when I thought Rockform's lineup of motorcycle products couldn't get any better, I'm excited to share with you that they've just recently released a brand new mounting system that maximizes your options for adjustability and convenience. The new Pro Ball mount is the most functional mounting system yet. It uses a universal handlebar mount that's compatible with handlebar diameters from 7/8 all the way to 1.5 inches, includes 5 different spacers to ensure a perfect fit. The double ball joint provides endless options for adjustability, so you can get the perfect viewing angle no matter what your bike setup is like. The Pro Ball mount is made of CNC aircraft grade aluminum with stainless steel hardware, so it's built to stand the test of time no matter how aggressive your riding is. The Rockform Pro Ball mount is an awesome addition to the line of products, so if you haven't gotten a Rockform mount yet or you're looking for an upgrade, click the link in the description and use the code YN25 to receive 25% off your order. That's 25% off using code YN25. Thanks so much to Rockform for the continued support on the channel. Now let's get back to the show. All right, devout Harley-Davidson fanboys, do not let any corporate decision go untested by their scorn. I mean, there's entire channels here on YouTube that are dedicated to just commentating on whatever the hell Harley-Davidson does from week to week. DEI policies, Chinese manufacturing, and certainly not no goddamn liberal liquid cooling. That stuff is for sissy boy pansies. And this army certainly made their voices heard when Harley released the V-ROD in 2001. The Bar and Shield faithful screamed, "Blasphemy. That's not a real Harley." Why? Because it was liquid cooled and it revved a little bit higher, and the engine wasn't that traditional potato push rod twin. Instead, it was the Porsche designed Revolution engine, an 1131cc 60-degree V-twin making about 115 horsepower. For Harley, that was space age technology. The V-ROD was Harley's attempt to modernize, to appeal to younger riders, and to break into the performance cruiser market. It's kind of weird how they've been trying to do that like every 10 years and they just never can get it done. It had super aggressive drag bike styling and a long wheelbase and handling that was actually pretty decent by Harley standards. But Harley purists hated it for not being a chrome-laden, air-cooled freedom machine. And even non-Harley riders dismissed it as just another cruiser with too much weight. The truth is, the V-ROD was one of the most advanced Harleys ever built. That Revolution engine was powerful and honestly pretty spicy. It is the engine that paved the architecture and the way for Harley's current Revolution Max engine used in the Pan America and the Sportster S. It was a glimpse of Harley's future that was unfairly rejected by its past, and they kind of still do that nowadays. Sure, it wasn't a perfect bike by any stretch of the imagination. It was a Harley-Davidson, for Christ's sake. But it was panned for the wrong reason. Because on the street, it pulled hard, it sounded cool, and had a very unique identity, essentially representing the opposite Harley-Davidson had previously stood for, and the customer base just wasn't ready for it at the time. All right, let's talk about one you may not have heard today. The Honda Hawk GT is a cult classic now, but when it came out in 1988, it was dismissed as underpowered and overpriced. Back then, everybody wanted inline-four sport bikes with screaming top-end power. The Hawk GT had a humble 647cc V-twin making about 58 horsepower. The critics said, "That's it? This thing costs more than a CBR 600 and makes less horsepower? Sounds a lot like what small-brained 600cc owners say nowadays, but let's stay on topic." But look, Honda wasn't aiming for spec sheet glory with that bike. The Hawk GT was about handling, character, and real-world riding. It had a twin-spar aluminum frame, a single-sided swing arm, which was seriously exotic stuff for a 650 at the time, and a torquey V-twin that made it a ton of joy in the corners. On the street, the Hawk was friendly, flickable, and rewarding. You could actually use all of the power without risking a trip to jail. And it felt alive in a way that inline fours just didn't at similar speeds around town. It was, in many ways, the spiritual ancestor to modern middleweight twins like the R7 or Aprilia RS660. Honestly, I think if Honda re-released the Hawk nowadays with all those same ingredients, a V-twin engine, twin-spar aluminum frame, single-sided swing arm, I think people would go crazy for it. But back in the day, people misunderstood it. They saw a low horsepower number and they just wrote it off. Now they've become sort of collector's items because riders finally realized that Honda was 30 years ahead of the curve. I mean, think about it this way. The Honda Hawk GT from 1988 is basically an SV650 about 10 years before the SV ever came out. The Yamaha TDM850 is another one of those bikes that was built in the wrong era. It was released in the early 90s. It combined a tall, upright stance, a parallel twin engine, and road-focused handling. Riders looked at it and said, well, what the hell is this? It's not a sport touring, it's not a dirt bike. What do I do with it? And that was the problem. The market wasn't ready for the concept that is so popular now. Versatile engine, upright ergos, long travel suspension, those tall rounders are a dime a dozen nowadays. You can't throw a stick without hitting a naked bike on stilts from some manufacturer now. The TDM850 was basically the first adventure sport touring bike before the term ADV was even a twinkle in Ewan McGregor's Jedi eyeballs. With about 77 horsepower from its 849cc parallel twin, it was versatile, comfortable, and could tackle twisty roads and long distances with ease. But riders dismissed it as just an identity crisis. Nobody knew how to categorize it. They didn't buy it, and they didn't buy into it. Meanwhile, BMW eventually launched the GS, and the entire world went ADV crazy. Yamaha was just too early. On the street, the TDM was brilliant. Upright comfort, usable power, great ergonomics. It was exactly the kind of do-everything bike that riders crave today. It just suffered from being misunderstood in its time. All right, last on the list, we've got the Kawasaki W800. When it launched, critics slammed it as an overpriced and underpowered bike compared to things like the Triumph Bonneville. They said it was bad value, just a retro knockoff without any modern performances. And look, they wouldn't be wrong, but when you take a step back, you can see how that sentiment kind of misses the point with this bike. The W800 isn't trying to be a Bonneville. It isn't a modern classic in the sense that it's blending old looks with modern performance. The W800 is an homage, a faithful recreation of Kawasaki's own W Series bikes from the 60s, which themselves were inspired by classic British machines. With its air-cooled 773cc parallel twin making about 48 horsepower, bevel gear-driven camshaft, and beautiful vintage styling, the W800 was all about authenticity. It almost rides like an old-school UJM with mellow performance, smooth handling, and a timeless style. Yes, it is more expensive than some of its rivals. I mean, this thing retails for over $10,000, but it's meticulously designed and delivers exactly what it promises. A true classic riding experience in a modern package. In a way, it's more spiritually correct to a Bonneville than a new Bonneville is nowadays. Scratch your head thinking about that one. On the street, the W800 is charming, approachable, and very stylish. If you expect it to be a performance bargain, you're going to be disappointed. But if you see it as an old school standard reborn, it's kind of neat. And while it is certainly an old school design, it's more enjoyable to ride than something like a Janus. And at nearly $11,000, it's cheaper too. Imagine that. Look, I'm just kidding, Janus. I don't hate you guys that much. It's just fun to make jokes, okay? Calm down. So there you have it. 7 motorcycles that were unfairly judged, misunderstood, or written off when they came out. The lesson here? Look, sometimes motorcycles don't fit into neat categories. And sometimes they don't meet the expectations riders unfairly place on them. But if you judge them by what they are instead of what they're not, you might just discover some truly awesome machines. Touch grass, read a book, decalcify your pineal gland, and while you're at it, why don't you do some taint tanning too? It's a big, wide world out there. Open your mind. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. I truly appreciate it. I will catch you all in the next one. Fact: ants actually sleep for 8 minutes every 12 hours. Look, you just gotta respect that Sigma hustle grind set. Ants stay locked in. They got shit to build. Goodbye.